speaker for tonight, Claire Huang, is an independent board director and expert in the fields of marketing and brand management. She, like myself, began her career at Procter & Gamble. She then moved to the financial services sector, working at American Express, and then had global head of marketing positions at both the Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, both in Boston and Hong Kong, and head of Fidelity Investments marketing and consumer strategy groups. She was then appointed the first ever Chief Marketing Officer for JP Chase, working with their marketing teams across all the Chase and JP Morgan retail and institutional businesses to grow their brands and their businesses. Something like $2.5 billion in marketing spend, right? Some enormous amount. $4 billion in marketing spend. That's a lot of money. Billion with a B. She's currently on the board of directors of a number of corporations, including a Prosper Marketplace, which is America's first peer-to-peer lending platform. She's on the board of Pods, which is a leader in moving and storage. You've probably seen them, these boxes sitting outside people's homes, right? Scott Trade, which is a leading online brokerage firm, and Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, which is one of the finest wineries in the Napa Valley. She's also on the board of the Conquer Cancer Foundation, and most importantly, she's a member of the board of the Busch. Please join me in giving a warm Busch welcome to Claire Huang.
Still not. Still not. Still not.
Looked like he had a good chance of winning. But at the last minute, a very influential and controversial candidate entered the race, throwing everything into disarray. What did our man do? He withdrew from the race and threw his support to an opponent he believed could prevail over the latecomer, who he believed was corrupt. Some say our man was plagued by pathological giving. Why step away from the election when he was so close to winning? His response, and I quote, "I could not let the whole political result go to ruin on a point merely personal to myself." I repeat, on a point merely personal to myself. In other words, the results could just be about my gain. Those are very selfless words. That man was Abraham Lincoln. And as you look at his entire life and career, it's obvious that his selflessness was a strength, not a weakness. We've been hearing more and more talk about selflessness as a highly effective approach to success in our personal careers. Witness the popularity of the book Give and Take by Adam Grant, a book I highly recommend. Or the recent studies showing kindness and selflessness can be contagious. Scientists James Fowler and Nicholas Christakis have scientifically proven that if you do something nice for someone, they will do something nice for 4 other people, and those 4 other people will do something nice for 4 other people. The question I want to address today is, can we guide our businesses to be selfless? And can that business selflessness lead to success and profit? My goal today is to show you why the answer to both those questions is a resounding yes. Like Lincoln, businesses that are other-centered have higher goals than personal gain and are more successful than companies who are not. And the data backs it up. I'm going to talk about 3 selfless intentions that lead to success in business. The first, be purpose-driven. Next, be customer-obsessed. And finally, make ethical choices. Let me go through each of these 3 ways companies can be selfless. These are all essential to good business, all of which must be rooted in a service mentality. Not everyday customer service, but service as a principle. Let's start with the first business principle. Be purpose-driven. One of my favorite books, another book that I highly recommend, is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a budding young psychiatrist who was rounded up with his family and shipped off to Auschwitz death camps during World War II. His mother, his father, brother, and pregnant wife would eventually be killed. In the face of everyday horror and adversity, Frankl concluded that it was essential to keep practicing the art of living inside prison walls. He observed that prisoners who found a purpose outside of themselves had a better chance of survival. It wasn't health, it wasn't youth, it wasn't sheer fortitude that helped one survive, he said. Instead, Frankl believed that people whose lives were imbued with meaning, who sought meaning and direction from a source outside of themselves, namely through living for a loved one like a child or a spouse, or faith in God, were better equipped to overcome painful experiences. And he had empirical evidence because he often intervened to prevent fellow inmates from committing suicide. This profound lesson about meaning and purpose from the mind of a brilliant man applies to everything in life, including business. Organizations that have meaning beyond financial profit end up finding profit. It seems paradoxical, but it's true. Brands that have a higher purpose outperform the S&P by 400% and grow 3 to 10 times faster than their competition. Purpose-driven companies are bigger than making money. We think of people first. What would be good for people? Then profit comes. As a result, they are more profitable, they attract more customers, people make an emotional connection with purpose-driven companies, and that connection is something that you cannot buy. Okay, let's do an audience participation. Show of hands. Who prefers to do business with companies that aren't all about themselves? Thank you. And it proves it in the numbers of the profitability of these purpose-driven companies. 9 in 10 millennials prefer brands that champion a cause, and nearly 2/3 of consumers globally say they choose brands based on the stance they make on social issues. And you know what? CEOs are listening. In August of this year, the Business Roundtable took a bold step. In case you don't know who the Business Roundtable is, it's a group of the top 200 most powerful business leaders. People like GM's Mary Barra, Boeing's Dennis Muilenburg, JP Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon, my former boss, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, and Tim Cook of Apple. This well-respected group recently issued an open letter to the world declaring their intention of starting to put people before profit. How? Delivering value to customers, investing in employees, dealing fairly and ethically with suppliers, supporting their communities, and generating long-term value for shareholders. This statement by the Business Roundtable is a breath of fresh air, and that's long overdue. While these CEOs won't turn their backs on their shareholders, they do believe businesses can do better. They say business must play a leading role in securing the world's future prosperity. I believe we are at the cusp of a sea change in corporate responsibility. One proponent of this vision is co-founder and CEO of Whole Foods, John Mackey. He calls it conscious capitalism. It's not your grandfather's capitalism either. It's a set of values and practices that put people first, is fueled by emotional intelligence, and creates value for all stakeholders. Brands that have a purpose higher than themselves develop a bond with consumers. Having that emotional connection is part of being purpose-driven. Being purpose-driven means standing for and doing something bigger than making money. In the words of famous author Simon Sinek, the author of The Why of Things, great brands not only talk about what they do, but why they do it. Consider Southwest Airlines. 10 years before Apple was founded, Herb Kelleher wanted to make air travel accessible to all Americans. To help you understand this, prior to 1979, interstate travel and the fares people paid to get to their destinations were controlled by the government. So when people flew, it was usually on business and it was expensive. It literally took an act of Congress to allow competition and lower costs. Southwest was founded on what I call a what if. What if we could help people afford air travel and visit the country and their friends and relatives? What if we could bring air travel to the masses? Southwest's actual written purpose says, I quote, to connect people to what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, low-cost air travel. Notice that the purpose doesn't say anything about profit. It is based on people benefiting who fly Southwest. There was purpose in that dream, and successful brands often start with when somebody dares to dream. There were many other reasons I admire Southwest. They delivered on their promise. Southwest started with fares as low as $10 and $20. And because of those low fares, Southwest didn't make any money until 6 years into their existence. Herb Kelleher wasn't cut from the usual CEO mold. You could say he dared to be different, and he put people first. Listen to this. He said, if employees come first, then they're happy. A motivated employee treats customers well. The customer is happy, so they keep coming back, which pleases the shareholders. It's just the way it works. So in the spirit of putting people first, Southwest created the first profit-sharing plan in the U.S. airline industry. Employees today own about 10% of the company's stock. With the purpose of democratizing air travel by lowering costs, Southwest lived up to its tagline, you are now free to move about the country. Today, Southwest is the largest airline in the U.S. in terms of passengers served. Another Kelleher gem, a company is stronger if it is bound by love rather than by fear. If only more leaders believe that and acted accordingly. Many successful what-ifs have nothing to do with profit. In fact, they seem destined for failure, like hiring patients from a mental asylum to make a product you know nothing about. Think that's going to work?
Fue un descubrimiento espectacular, que el trabajo es importante para la gente.
Comença a fer iogurts.
I'm in the world where young and old are bought and sold, but I'm not of it.
Todo trabajo que se hace con alegría y con emoción y ilusión, todo trabajo es interesante.
Nosaltres hem de vetllar per la persona d'una manera global. No veure només la part de treballador, sinó que ell pugui desenvolupar aquesta part artística perquè ell es sentirà molt més realitzat a la vida.
Yo siempre digo que nosotros no nos dedicamos a hacer yogures, que nos dedicamos a que la gente sea un poco más feliz haciendo yogures, ¿no?
On the surface, La Fajada looks nothing like a commercial enterprise. A psychiatrist named Cristobal Colon wanted to give mental patients a better life. So he created jobs for them, housing for them, and a sense of purpose. He helped them recover their dignity and their freedom. Today, La Fajada employs more than 250 people who make high-quality jams, yogurt, and ice cream. Annual sales are 16 million euros. They're based in Spain, in case you didn't figure that. La Fajada is a social cooperative, not a business. It never sold itself as a cause. Colon's motive was altruistic. He says, we don't make yogurt, we make the people who make the yogurt. La Fajada products are sold at prices 40% higher than those of competing products. In a market that's only experiencing natural organic growth, their sales are increasing at a rate of 15 to 20% a year. Consumers are willing to pay more when their motive behind the product is good. Those brands succeed because they make an emotional connection with the consumer, and people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. CEOs have made their mark by shedding underperforming businesses. Now they will slash brands that don't act with purpose. If you're not familiar with Unilever, you know their brands like Axe, Dove, Lipton, Talenti Gelato, one of my favorites. Unilever CEO Alan Jobe recently issued a warning. He said he would sell off any Unilever brands that don't have purpose-driven goals or that fail to do something that's great in themselves for society. Some brands try to be purpose-driven, but sometimes the gesture doesn't resonate with the audience. Is that purpose important to the people they're trying to serve? A few years ago, Pepsi came up with what they call a refresh project. They said they give $20 million to their customers' favorite charities in communities and asked if people would cast their votes. It was a complete disaster. Customers, who were primarily teenagers, had other priorities. They didn't care about refreshing their communities. After 2 years, Pepsi closed down the project and had to fire 7,000 people. Pepsi isn't the only company that failed. Some of you may be aware of the term woke washing. It's using social justice platform as a marketing strategy, using philanthropic acts like to promote yourself in your business. Countless others have been accused of woke washing. Being woke is an admirable thing, but simply co-opting consumer sentiment with a sensitive message that is not important to your audience and then failing to follow up with action does exactly the opposite of building trust. It destroys trust. These examples prove that if you have a purpose larger than profit, a mission that is good for your customers and for society, then you can profit financially. Some equate purpose as writing a check to a charity. It's far more than that. My brother-in-law was the son of a West Point graduate. He attended the Air Force Academy, became an F-15 fighter pilot, and was promoted to colonel in the Air Force. He was very well respected. Think about Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Only Ray was the real thing. When Ray got out of the Air Force, he had a choice of what airline he would work for as a pilot. He chose Southwest. Even though Southwest's pay was about half of what Delta was paying, Ray believed in the purpose of Southwest. He wanted to work for a place that had higher purpose than profit. When Ray interviewed at Southwest, it was obvious that a focus on others, service before self, and family values were held in the highest regard. That airline insisted that all of its employees must be other-centered. If you're fundamentally driven by power, if you don't have a servant heart, you don't get the job at Southwest. It's really an amazing culture that Ray says it's very much alive, and he's been working there for 22 years. And because of the company's profit sharing, Ray has done very well for himself and for his family. So to summarize, companies that have a purpose that prioritizes people over profit, ironically, leads to profit. Which leads me to my second point. Be customer obsessed. Why do I say being customer obsessed requires selflessness? It's because most companies that are truly customer obsessed aren't consumed with pushing their products. Instead, they're passionately curious about their customers, the customer who is buying or may buy their product. Being passionately curious takes a lot of energy, and these companies have discovered the importance of putting all their weight behind customer obsession. Anything else is just a waste of energy. Being obsessed with customer means being obsessed with what they think, what they buy, what they do, what they want, what they've done before, where they spend their time. And often that means not falling in love with technology for technology's sake. Steve Jobs understood that back in 1997 when an audience member challenged him at Apple's World Developer Conference. Jobs didn't get defensive. He didn't sputter or lash out. He took a deep breath and paused to gather his thoughts, then admitted the questioner was right. He, Jobs, didn't have all the answers. Then Jobs used the opportunity to reaffirm Apple's strategy that starts with the customer, not with technology.
And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that. And I think that's the right path to take.
Some concepts are timeless. Steve Jobs spoke those words back in 1997, and it still is very true today. Start with the customer in mind. The tools have gotten more sophisticated, so there is no excuse not to be laser focused on the customer. In the old days, it was about targeting and segmentation and quantitative studies and focus groups. Then we graduated to innovation and analytics to anticipate what customers want in the future. Now, we're in the post-digital era. We have artificial intelligence, distributed ledgers, and extended reality. So how does one become customer obsessed? One of the first ways is focusing on customer service. How many of you are familiar with Publix, the supermarket chain? Their guarantee is, we will never knowingly disappoint you. Never. Think of that, tens of thousands of transactions a day, and not once will they let a customer down. Or allow a customer to walk away disappointed. That's a 1 in 1,000 batting average, or really high standard. There's a legendary story that proves this point. Jim Rhodes, who was the Vice President of Human Resources at the time, had worked his way up the company ladder from lead department manager and got a call one day on a Saturday afternoon while he was mowing the lawn. A customer complained that she had brought a frozen pizza and it destroyed her oven. Very fishy. Rhodes dropped what he was doing and went to the woman's house. There he found years of burnt pizza caked to the bottom of her oven. Rhodes remembered the Publix guarantee promises complete satisfaction. He drove to a store, bought a couple of frozen pizzas, a putty scraper, an oven cleaner, and got on his knees and cleaned her oven for her. Publix employees carry your groceries to your car. They deliver to people who are sick, all part of the desire to never knowingly disappoint. You'd think an aspiration like this would diminish over time, but this promise has not only not diminished as the company grew, it has been a driver of growth. Today, Publix has sales of $36 billion, 200,000 employees, and 1,251 stores. Remember what I said earlier about the power of kindness? That if you do something nice for someone, they will do something nice for 4 people, and each of them will do something nice for 4 other people, and so on. Kindness has a place in customer service. Kindness is what separates an average customer service from exceptional customer service. And exceptional customer service wins revenue and earns prestige. There's no more prestigious brand than Mercedes. But behind that glitter and glamour is a very down-to-earth concept, committing random acts of kindness. When he was head of Mercedes-Benz USA, Steve Cannon firmly believed that the company's success or failure would be based on interactions customers have in the dealership. An associate, being a salesperson, service manager, or a cashier, could choose to act in a memorable way or just go through the motions. Under Canon's leadership, Mercedes got its associates excited about the brand and gave them the authority to do whatever it takes to delight the customer, like bringing in a surprise birthday cake at the closing, or when the customer limped in with a flat tire on her way to her son's graduation. The service manager replaced it with a tire from another car so she could be on her way in minutes. The second way to be customer obsessed is to use data. Amazon anticipates what people want. It was the first retailer to recommend something new based on what you previously bought. They started Amazon Prime before they knew people wanted it. But what if the customer is never satisfied? In his famous 2016 letter to shareholders, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos wrote, "Customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied. Even when they report being happy and business is great. Even when they don't yet know it, customers want something better, and your desire to delight customers will drive you to invent on their behalf." Day 2 is status, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. No drama. And that's why it's always day 1. Bezos says every day has to feel like day 1, where you're constantly thinking about how to please your customers, even suggesting things to them because they often don't know what they want. A great path is to use data. All the data you have and can gather from third-party sources, analyze and use that info to provide interesting value propositions. Successful brands like Amazon use data analytics to understand and anticipate customer behavior. In fact, there is so much information coming back to retailers and consumers that it's becoming suffocating. We have to figure out which data to collect and how to analyze it. It's important to create a data strategy and to understand the data you need. Data that you analyze and the way you analyze it must be aligned to business objectives, and so that you can understand a customer's worth, what they value, and what they want. To be customer obsessed requires creativity and imagination. You just can't ask the customer what they want. You have to work harder to discover things that they have not yet imagined. Netflix started out by saying the need to be entertained is fundamental, and we're going to make more shows than anyone. Can't dispute Netflix's domination of our lives through entertainment. Netflix understands what you want to watch. They offer content that resembles what you watched previously. So the lesson is, don't just ask what the customer wants. Instead, look at the data and draw conclusions. The data on their behavior tells you much more than they would volunteer. The genesis of getting information was a search function at Google. It was a gift to marketers. When consumers are searching for something, they have intent, and marketers act on that intent. Consider all the tools and technology that have been developed over the years to understand the consumer. We started with search, then search engine optimization, then email marketing, then social media, then online video, display ads, programmatic ads, connected TV, influencer campaigns. We developed so many tools out of an extreme need to better understand and reach our customers. We can no longer afford to push things to consumers. Instead, we are increasingly observing their behavior, watching them search, browse, and choose, and making note of how much they spend and for what and when. Even though many companies have made progress aligning themselves with their customers, there's still a disconnect between what people do and what companies understand. To uncover that, every good marketer needs to understand the customer journey. We not only have tons of data, but we can do more with it. For example, we have behavioral data that tells us where people go on the web, their preferences, and what motivates them. Momentary markets are where the potential exists to convince someone to make a purchase, given they've been searching for something, and capitalize on a need. Find needs that people have at the moment. This has happened to all of us. We're thinking about something, searching for something, talking about it, then we see an ad for it. The most successful companies are able to exploit this data to create momentary markets. Mastering momentary markets will be both an art and a science. Delivering for every moment is impractical and unnecessary. The art lies in picking the right opportunities to be both effective and welcomed by consumers. The science is in building a company that can create context-aware customer products and services on demand. Another way to be customer-obsessed is to be focused on the need instead of pushing your product. At Fidelity, when brokerage accounts first came out, you could put money in, but it's very difficult to take money out. Ned Johnson, the owner and chairman of Fidelity, said that one of the things people want is check writing abilities. People challenged him saying, well, if you give people a check, won't money just flow out of Fidelity? It's too easy to write a check. He countered with, but that's what people want. They want access to their money. Consumers realized that Fidelity was on their side and invested more with Fidelity. And Fidelity was the first in the industry to do it. When I worked at Fidelity, it was a mutual fund giant, selling actively traded funds. Some portfolio manager would pick stocks and bundle them. Fidelity made a ton of money selling mutual funds. When I arrived, I said, that's not a customer need. People don't go around saying, I want a mutual fund. That's peddling a product. We realized what people really wanted was help with their retirement. So regardless of their income, we were there to help them. So we changed the whole view of Fidelity from being a mutual fund giant to fulfilling a customer need, which was a secure retirement. We did A/B testing of different advising and sales models. It took more time to do that, but we sold triple the amount of funds when we took the time to help people. We also employed one of the fundamentals of marketing, segmentation. We divided our audience into segments and identified groups with similar behaviors. We developed segments representing varying degrees of wealth, and we treated each group differently depending on what their needs were. We conducted studies to identify our sweet spot, which turned out to be people with assets of $250,000 to $1 million in investable assets. Then we targeted them. We hired Paul McCartney as a spokesperson and went from, buy this fund, it made 30% last year, to never stop doing what you love. It was an aspirational and much deeper than profit. I want to share with you one of the things I'm most proud of in my past.
This is Paul. He's been a quarryman, beetle, wing, poet, father, frontman, producer, business mogul, painter, and if that weren't enough, a knight. The key is, never stop doing what you love. Call us today. We'll help you plan for the next part of your life. Fidelity Investments. Smart move.
Sure is different from, here's a mutual fund, buy some. By the way, our goal was still to make money, but the way to engage people to sell funds was to focus on what customers needed. It took a significant investment to fix that, and when we were successful, we had to hire more people. The year I joined Fidelity, our net assets, which is the amount of assets come in minus the assets that leave, our net assets was $100 million. For a company that deals with trillions in assets, that's a rounding error. We went to $70 billion in 5 years, 700% increase. It's another way to be obsessed with the customer because one size does not fit all. The third area a company can be selfless is by making ethical choices. My father was my hero, the most ethical person I've ever known. His family escaped China and fled to the Philippines. Wellington was my father's name, not a name you'd expect from a Chinese businessman, I must admit. But he was one of 12 children and supported his siblings when his father sat in jail for opposing the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. He started a business with a loan from his father-in-law and became successful. But his prosperity didn't blow him off an ethical course, even though he was surrounded by corruption. The Philippines was very corrupt at the time. Lots of wealthy people were not paying taxes, and they were getting away with it. When you see other people getting away with something, it's tempting to do the same thing. But my father did not succumb to that rationalization. He didn't make the list of the 200 wealthiest men in the country, and yet the papers published the top 200 taxpayers, and there was my father's name. My father's example taught me to have a clear understanding of what's right and wrong. Marketers get a bad rap. They are accused of manipulating consumers, changing the rules to suit the situation, coloring outside the lines. Ethics is more important than ever, even though it's not talked about enough. One of the places I worked for was Haagen-Dazs. It was a very fattening experience. When I joined Haagen-Dazs, it was a successful brand that was experiencing record losses because of bad ethical decisions. At the time, Haagen-Dazs was using sex to sell ice cream. Yeah, sex. Ads showed a couple in bed eating ice cream with a tag, better than anything, which means, yeah. The business was seeing double-digit declines. Ice cream had nothing to do with sex. So we made a radical pivot from Haagen-Dazs, it's better than anything, implied sex, to have a Haagen-Dazs, urging people to do something nice for themselves. At the risk of oversimplifying the business, we went on to achieve double-digit volume and profit. Haagen-Dazs went back to using sex in the UK, and here's a copy of their ads. Again, they dropped this slow-road sex campaign in favor of everyday made extraordinary, saying the new theme reflected the priorities of the millennials. So, sex didn't sell. Sometimes you fail. The difference between a mediocre company and a great company is admitting failure and fixing it. Okay, I want to take a quick poll. If you were given $1,000 to invest, would you invest it in Apple, Amazon, or Domino's Pizza? Who would choose Apple? Very small group. Who would choose Amazon? Whoa, almost everybody. And who would choose Domino's? Okay, you know the story already. Okay, so let's see where the ethical choices makes better business. When people think your pizza crust tastes like cardboard, you've got a problem. But Domino's was undeterred. CEO Patrick Doyle admitted Domino's crust was terrible and promised to fix it. Rather than hide behind the problem or get defensive, Domino's put their customers first and poked fun at themselves. Not only have they created a better pizza, but they're making it more fun. Scan your pizza with the Domino's app. It doesn't even have to be one of theirs and earn points towards a free pizza. Domino's re-engineered its pizza and the public took notice. Sales took off and Domino's continued to reimagine ways to order pizza and is using all the technology available to them to double down on convenience in ordering and delivery. Technology helped them grow faster. Okay, here's the ta-da slide. If you had $1,000 to invest in 2010 and put it in Apple, your stock would have grown by 697% to $7,000. For most of you Amazonians, your Amazon stock would have grown by 1,366%, so you would have $13,666. But if you put that $1,000 in Domino's in 2010, your stock would have grown by 1,907% and be worth $19,000 today. Sometimes, what seems best for business isn't ethical. Take casinos, for example. Harris performed extensive analytics on customers and determined the best way to grow revenue is to foster compulsive gambling behavior. While that's effective, it's not ethical. There's a bright line between what's legal and what's not. It's the gray areas that are tougher. The gray areas test our character, and it's those gray areas where our intentions are known, for better or for worse. When a business and its people are driven by purpose, When they're obsessed with the customer and when they make ethical choices, they thrive. So to conclude, the 3 ways companies succeed through selflessness are: 1, be purpose-driven. Have a goal that is bigger than making a buck. Herb Keller at Southwest had that in mind when he wanted to make air travel affordable to all Americans. Fajeda didn't start out by making dairy products. It started as a community who had mental problems could thrive, then emerged as a beloved brand. Be obsessed with your customers, rather than being obsessed with your product and pushing to the customer. Fidelity understood the challenges people face on the road to retirement and showed them how to pursue their dreams, helping people actually led them to sell significantly more mutual funds than pushing funds directly. Steve Jobs said, always start with the customer in mind. Number 3, be ethical. Domino's admitted the truth about its lousy crust and fixed it. It had enough confidence in its improved crust that it doubled down with technology to deliver more of those crusts with greater convenience to hungry people. All of the brands I've discussed today put people before profit, and not surprisingly, profit follows. They are selfless because they are confident in who they are. They act with purpose. So to conclude, Lincoln was guided by unselfishness and service for others. He did not enter politics for his own glory. He understood that holding public office was entering into a sacred trust with the people and a commitment to represent their best interests and welfare. In his book, Give and Take by Adam Grant, he notes that Lincoln is seen as one of the least self-centered, least egotistical, least boastful presidents ever. When he was elected president, he asked his opponents to join his cabinet. Why should I let ego get in the way and deprive the nation of their services? He asked. Successful companies take the lesson of Lincoln seriously. They understand that they've entered into a sacred trust with the public. They know that continually taking won't get them very far, but giving is empowering and enriching. So as you consider your career choices and decisions you have to make in the months and the years ahead, I want you to take these words to heart. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we have some time for questions. We've got a couple in the back there.
The answer is I did not invest in Domino's in 2010.
I have a question regarding what you were talking about being customer obsessed, and this also relates to the making ethical choices.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the collecting
Can you stand
data,
up so I can see? If you don't mind. Thank
so
you.
when you talk about collecting data, so what's your opinion, or where would you say draw the line between collecting data for advertisement and the invasion of privacy? Because a lot of people today are making the argument that Google or Facebook keeping track of what they say to push ads or seeing everywhere they go on the internet is an invasion of their privacy.
It is a great question, and it's a debate that's going on right now. Highly contested debate. I don't know if there's the right answer to that. One of the things that I did when I was head of marketing for all of those companies is we made sure that we anonymized the data so that we could use trends and behavior, but we never know it was Angela. It was always a group of Angelas, or it was a group of Andrews, or it was a group of Claires. It wasn't this person. So we tried to use anonymized data instead of using individual data. Number 2 is, it's a very difficult fine line because some people say, like me, if I'm going to a website and looking at stuff, I am not interested in NFL paraphernalia. So if somebody is selling me NFL paraphernalia, I'd be like, this is not relevant. My husband would love NFL paraphernalia. So would I like stuff on cars or other things that I'm interested in? Yes. So this is why the debate is, because even though sometimes it feels like it's an invasion, it's still much more customized to what your preferences are than wasting time on things that are not interesting to you. So I don't think that debate is going on right now. I don't think there's an answer that's final. But I think you asked a great question that is raging. The debate is raging in the public square.
Another question?
So my question is, what happens when you put people first and you still lose? For example, WeWork and Uber.
Okay. I don't know if WeWork is an example of putting people first. It's not a simple story. Uber and WeWork is not a simple story of saying they put people first and therefore they crash. First of all, WeWork, and I'm not here to judge WeWork, but I know there were many scandals with the CEO using company money for his self-interest. And because of that, and many other reasons, I'm not oversimplifying, I am a little oversimplifying. Because of that, I think there were other reasons why they delayed their IPO. Now, WeWork would still be very successful if they fixed whatever problems they have and then do their IPO. So I don't know if WeWork is a poster child for being people-centered.
Yeah, I just meant like the business model of allowing space, for business or for startups.
Right. No, and I admire WeWork, and JP Morgan Chase uses WeWork. They have a great business idea, but I think one of the key things that maybe they could do more of is what I suggest, is have a purpose outside the space idea. Like do something bigger than space. Have a cause that's bigger than we want to create optimal spaces for people.
There's a question here in the front.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming and speaking. I really enjoyed the talk. Love the Netflix parody. That was great. So my question is kind of related to the one we just had. So I was wondering, because like you said, Southwest took a while, and you said 6 years before it became profitable.
Right.
So I was wondering, how do you know, can you offer some insight into the very fine line between, making sure you have profitability for investors, but also making sure that you choose the path that's in the customer's interest that might involve less profitability in the short run.
Right. So in addition to these three things that I would say, so number one, be purpose-driven, right? Have a bigger cause. Number two, be customer-obsessed. Number three, be ethical. There are many other lists of business qualities that need to happen that are not necessarily about selflessness. For example, one of the first things I do when I start on a board is ask the question, what is your competitive differentiator? How are you different from your competition so that you can say, in Procter & Gamble, we call it the ER statements. And everybody's like, what's ER? Whiter, shinier, brighter, they all end in ER. So you'd always have to figure out what your ER statement is. Like, what can you deliver that's different than your competition? That's one of the things I would say. So I guess I'm not going to go through the list of all the things that you have to do as a company, but there is a broad list of things that you have to do as a company to say, you have a value proposition that's really interesting to customers. You have something that's different from your competition. Are you purpose-driven? Are you really looking for ways to innovate for your customer constantly? Amazon didn't just stick to what they were doing, they kept innovating. Amazon is now doing web services, doing shipping, doing ridiculous amounts of categories because of what Jeff Bezos said. Day one is every day. So that's some of the thinking that I would say when you think about a business. But a lot of companies, LinkedIn didn't make money for years, and now they're very profitable, great company. And there are many companies that have to like go through the growing pains and create sustainable advantage and differentiation in the marketplace, and then they hit their stride and then they start.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So in regards to like purpose-driven businesses, so when it comes to like causes that businesses have,
yes,
sometimes they can be almost like inherently political in nature, and sometimes that can like alienate some customers, like having like some example like Pepsi and Gillette, like it had things that just end up causing a lot of controversy, things like that.
yes.
So isn't there like a so in regards to like purpose-driven, is there does it have to be inherently neutral, or companies should sometimes like take steps to almost like choose an issue that is political or things like that?
Yeah, that's why I brought up the concept of wolf washing. I did talk about Gillette, but for those of you who didn't know about Gillette, Gillette was accused of wolf washing, basically using the Me Too movement and saying that that is the cause of that's the purpose of their business. And everybody said, what? Blades, Me Too, razors, Me Too movement? It's like, they just took a cause and tried to make it their own because it was hot in the marketplace. And what happened? Everybody saw right through them and said, this is not sincere, this is just a made-up cause that you're made up and you're trying to woke wash, as they say. And so the purpose has to be, number one, aligned with what your customers are thinking. Number two, real, sincere, not a fake cause, not something that you're just making up and saying, okay, tomorrow we're going to be about blank. It has to be real about your business. It has to be living with your employees. It has to be living like Herb Kelleher did. Other-centeredness was not just something he made up. He lived it. He hired people who were like him. He really wanted to take airline flights to the whole country with $10 flights. So it can't just be like, we're going to be the cheap airline and we're going to charge $1,000 for a flight, right? He charged $10 for a flight. So it has to be real. It cannot be woke washing. Because I think people are smart. People will see right through it, and people will say, that's fake, and I'm not going to support that company. So it's a great question, but it has to be sincere. And if it's sincere, people will know that it's not political, because they're actually doing it, not pretending that it's a cause. Make sense?
There's a question right there.
Another question.
Yeah.
Thank you. I work for a startup actually in DC, so a lot of this purpose-driven stuff really resonated with me. Not to plug anything. You mentioned briefly casinos and how they could be seen as pretty unethical. And I understand there's a big gap between something like casinos and something like Enron, but I still think it's important that we recognize that people have vices, and it'd be a little naive to say that there aren't businesses that cater to that and still serve them. It's still not hurt anybody, is the best way to say it.
Yes.
So how do you approach that, or what's your opinion, I guess, on businesses that still create a niche and provide services to people, but maybe could be frowned upon by others, kind of stay in the shadows?
So the way I think about it is people have choices. I have the choice to work for a gambling company. I have the choice to work for a tobacco company. I have the choice to work for any of these companies that I think are not aligned with my values, and I wouldn't work there. So I think people make choices, and if their choices are that, I think people have to make choices based on their values. And my values tell me that I will not work for Harris Casino, I will not work for Julu, I will not work for, places that I think denigrate the human dignity. So that's my choice. I think other people make other choices, and the world is free, so people can make choices depending on what they want. Another question? Last question? Okay. Yes, sir.
Very good. So afterwards, Claire's going to stay a little bit, so if any of you have sort of one-on-one questions that you want to ask, you can come forward. And a final round of applause and thank you.